Okay. Okay. I want to welcome everybody and thank you for all being here today. In my presentation, I have been discussing the subject of organization. What is always interesting is that I find whenever I bring up that subject, instead of clearing issues up or people's questioning, things seem to become more complicated because people seem to have more questions at the end than they did at the beginning. And I have experienced this many times. What was happening at this camp meeting is that either people have begun to ask questions that they had not been willing to ask before, but I think for most people, it's something different. They had not thought about the same thing of these issues, and now they have been highlighted. These questions come to them as new. These questions come to them as new questions. So the question that I'm receiving now, after having been cleared up, I guess some of the simplest or foundational issues are much more specific and detailed questions. People in Europe are asking me, how does Europe actually work? Or what is the relationship between me and this other person? In the French world, I have received many questions. Why are things the way that they are? And again, some of those questions are very specific to that situation. So I want to say the following. If you find yourself in a position now, you are more, you have more questions than you did before, please remember you have all these leaders. And before this camp meeting, they were all debriefed, everyone agreed, and they were all informed. So if you have any specific questions about your situation, your first port of call should be your local leaders, then your continental leaders, and then Tess and myself. It's better to do it that way than to come directly to us so that you have a much more informed response. So a question that came up a few times and that I've answered a few times is the problem here, the LGC. So people are wondering why Elder Maurice is shown here. And why is this great man so low? And why is he not up here with the GLC? So I want to remind everybody that the role of an elder, if you exclude number 4, that would be the flock, ordinance, marriage, funerals, dedications, that does not take a large part of the elder's time. Now, I know we don't have very many elders, but the majority of them haven't even performed a marriage. And I'm going to say, except one, but I can't remember having any having performed funerals. We have had a few dedications, and dedications are healing as well. And of course, everyone has done ordinances. So the point I'm trying to make, when we speak about elders at any level, the vast majority of that person's work is this, looking after the spiritual needs of the flock. So now I want to remind us that to be at this level, you don't necessarily have to be an elder. As you all know, Sister Terry has been doing this work for a very long time and is only now going to be ordained. And Brother Manjit did his work for over a year before he was ordained. So that level in that family tree is really an organizational role. Some people may be content. No, some people may become competent teachers, and others may be more familiar with the administrative issues. The issues of identifying them or obtaining them as elders does not add to their credibility, and it doesn't add to their work. I hope we can all see that it would be short-sighted to have someone at this level and say, we will not make you an elder. They should have that capability. We think it's important, part and parcel of the responsibility of a leader. So that's why they are ordained. So although Brother Maurice is here, who is a local elder, which means he needs to take care of the local flock, I want to remind everybody that he is part of the ministry, the LGC, and therefore he is part of the team. But his role is not of an elder, it is of an administrator. So the question that was asked was, when we have elders whose responsibility is spiritual and doctrine, how does that relate to someone who is on a board who is an administrator? Essentially, the question is asking, should we have elders on the board? So they are asking, should these two have separate roles or separate people, or two separate people?
I lost where you're at.
I'm up on.
You read.
Yeah, go down more. I already did that part. Yeah. I'm on page 7.
There's something that was missing.
Huh?
There was something that was missing. Because you didn't read this part here.
Where?
All that is missing at the moment is the French world. Did I miss something?
Did I can I see something?
Yeah, I don't know unless I missed something.
Oh, okay. So I didn't turn the other page over. I'm okay. I'll go back to there.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. All that is missing at the moment is that the French world does not have a recognized leader at this level. And this camp meeting was neither the time nor the place to discuss who that person would be. And so I'm hoping that addresses the question about Elder Maurice. So from my perspective, one of the most difficult areas to deal with in the world is Europe. And it's because it's the one of the few continents that is truly multilingual. In fact, you can see that we have grouped all French-speaking countries together and given it its own branch. And by the way, this is not every country that is listed here. There are some that are missing. There's even a country in South America that I have not put here. That is the French-speaking, and that we have a presence in. So another question that I was asked is, what about Jamaica? When I speak about the Caribbean. So of course, when I put the Caribbean here, it was not meant to represent every Caribbean island, only the French-speaking. The English-speaking islands are connected to another continental leader. And so I'm hoping that clears up that question. Now, so the question was asked was, when we have elders whose responsibility is spiritual and doctrine, how does that relate to someone who is on a board or who is an administrator? Essentially, the question is asking, should we have elders on board? So they are asking, should these be two separate roles or two separate people? So I don't know if the person who asked the question can identify themselves, but what I want to remind that person is, if we said that the administrator would run ministry boards and elders would remain separate, can you guess what my question is going to be? What would you want me to do? That would be what his question is. Do you want me to be an administrator or an elder? Because if it's an elder and not an administrator, my life would be so much easier. So I'm hoping that the questioner can see what we see sometimes that is straightforward is not so straightforward. So would you want Elder Tabo just to take care of the spiritual needs of the members in Africa? And if you get organizational problems or the board starts fighting, or there's an issue in the countries that are there, who will sort out that problem? We would have to get an administrator. So I'm hoping we can see the difficulty. I want to remind you, if you go to the conference church, despite all their thoughts and failings, the people at the top who run the church are almost always, I'll call them ex-pastors or conference pastors, we might call them. And as a pastor, and a pastor is nothing more than a glorified elder. Now you might say, well, that's not evidence. That is good. But I think the way that I think the way that both the church works and the way that we work, I think it is reasonable, sensible, and pragmatic. Of course, we don't make every administrator an elder, and we don't make every elder an administrator. We try to deal with people as individuals with their varying talents. So the question was, in a country, we should have a ministry board, which are all administrators, and separate to that board. We should have an individual who would be an elder, in that case, a local elder. Separating the spiritual doctrine from the administrative issues, and though that may seem a good solution, often it causes more problems that you may realize or appreciate. In certain localities, based upon the local needs, the model has been followed, that the elder has been separated from the board, but often it's not the case. And just because it has been done that way in one place, it does not mean it has to be done in other places. So in this branch, we have an elder who is on the board, whereas some African countries, we don't have that situation. It is different dynamic. I'm trying to be clear that this structure is not fixed. It's not settled. It will change and stretch to meet the needs of a growing movement. As in the time of Christ, our biggest problem is the following. We just don't have enough consecrated workers. And when I say consecrated, of course, we know that we are students of prophecy, but our biggest need is people who take care of others. That is our biggest need. And if we could find more qualified people who really cared, we could have many more people in positions of responsibility. So a question that comes up is, what if things are not going correct? If you're dissatisfied with the way things are working? And what tends to happen is, now this is not meant to insult any of you. So if you go back to the first king of Israel, Saul, you know that he quickly developed a problem with David, and David becomes a fugitive. Now quickly, David begins to gather what I will call a band of men. Now those men do not join David because they see that he is going to be king. Their motivation is ugly. I'll express it this way. Your enemy is my enemy. And if we have a common enemy, then we can be friends. So they never really had anything in common with David. They were not protecting him because he was going to be the future king. They were just rebels. And this movement has attracted rebels. Many of us have left the conference structure because we thought the conference structure was too liberal, that they had abandoned their standards and they were not faithful to the message, whatever that meant, peace and safety. And I would argue, up to recently, almost everyone that has joined this movement was in rebellion to the conference structure. So we have by nature a rebellious spirit within us. Okay, I'll say it nicely. We are free thinkers. We're not rebellious, we're free thinkers, faithful to God's word. And we know that's a joke, don't we? Because we are considered the least faithful now. So the point I want to make is, generally, people who join this movement are anti-establishment. We like to think for ourselves, and we are not going to listen to the voice of a human. Isaiah 2:22, the Bible says, cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accused of? So don't listen to human beings because they just make things up. And it's so clear. We should obey God rather than man. And that was all good under Elder Jeff's leadership. The English word is muck, but you will use wild. Elder Jeff would let the people in this movement run amok, run wild. These two authoritarian people will not let you do that. And that's Tess and Elder Tess and Elder Harmender, because there it says we are a lot more administrative. So we then set a precedence. And if you are somewhere here and you want to do something, you want to talk to someone over here, we are just going to tell you, you're not allowed to do it. So if you want to talk to people over here, all you have to do is go all the way up, across, and then all the way back down. And how complicated is that? People do not like being told what to do, but this is serious. It's okay on a sunny day with the wind behind your back, when everything's going well, because people love structure, like this camp meeting. Someone has taken all the efforts to this camp meeting. Someone has taken a lot of effort to organize all of this. We're all happy and it's all good. But when people start telling you to do things you do not like, it becomes difficult. Which leads me to the point I wanted to make. We are part of a movement. And if you do not like the way this movement works at any level, tough luck. You can't just do what you want. And I don't like the way the Kenyon board does their business. Okay, I don't mind them, but I don't like the local church, my local church. And so I just want to start my own church. Is that okay? And the answer is no. And so I'm sure that we can all see that it cannot be correct to do that. And this is the growing pain that this movement is going through. Secretly, without warning, all the freedoms that you thought you had have been taken away from you. And I don't know what else to do. We don't know what else to do, Elder Tess and myself. An organization of this size, preparing to grow, must have rules, must have discipline. There's just no way of getting around that. And you might think that it is wrong. But like people are saying, in any family, there must be some order and some discipline. It's just that this movement is not used to behaving that way. And I want to remind you that what David Smith almost did when he made a bad decision. They tried to kill him. So it's not surprising that people get frustrated and upset with the leadership. You do not like the way I operate. You do not like the way Elder Manjet operates, or Elder Taboo is too strict. I wish I could move and have another elder. The elders down here don't do anything. There are many things that people can complain about. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't complain. Complaining is fine if it's done in the right way and in the right spirit. But withdrawing and separating from what I want to call the established work is just something that's not going to happen. And I'm hoping that we can see that that's the right decision, because we cannot allow these things to disintegrate and what's that word? Disintegrate, and everybody else what is right in their own mind. Excuse me?
Disintegrate.
Disintegrate. Okay, thank you. And everybody does what's right in their own mind. That's what happened in the time of the judges. And it produced a backlash that they demanded a king, which is even worse than the mess that they were in before. Because in the judges, at least every person could decide for themselves. When you have a king, there's no decision. I believe, and I'm serious, I really do believe what I'm about to say. I think that we have struck a good balance On Monday, we might swing to the left, and on Tuesday, we may swing to the right, but generally, we are in the right direction. We're on the right path. It is a combination of having a king and having a judge. Each of us has many freedoms and rights, and they are not trampled upon. All of us are free thinkers, are free to think as we desire, and yet we still must make difficult decisions and enforce things. So sometimes we behave like a king, and sometimes we behave like you just want to do what you want. But when it comes to the collective action, that means a group of people doing something, we cannot allow a situation. If a group of people are unhappy, they can't just pull away and start their own thing. Not in this history, just before Panium. It's not the right way to go. So I pretty much exhausted all the questions or the questions that I've received on organization. With a small caveat, there are specific questions in certain areas that I prefer not to speak publicly. As I told you in the beginning, we are prepared to discuss these things with you. This camp meeting was not the end of a dialogue. It was designed to be the beginning. So if you have sensible questions, please ask them, but try to go through your leaders so that they can be answered at a local level and then escalate if they are difficult. So I want to move over to a slightly different subject. So I got a question recently from a sister, a friend of mine, and they were sent this little clip from an article from the Adventist magazine. So the magazine is called The Health Reformer. November 1st, 1869, the subject is on vaccination. So I'm going to read the whole paragraph. As we are opposed to curing primary diseases by producing drug diseases, so we cannot see the propriety of curing or preventing contagious or infectious diseases by inoculating the system with venoms and viruses. We have known that the worst form of scrophula and the most loathsome conditions of venereal disease to be traceable directly to vaccinations. Even if the vaccine matter could be pure, we should oppose the practice of preventing any disease by means of a virus introduced into the blood. But it so happens that we seldom can have any assurance that the animal or person from whom the matter is obtained are not diseased. The health reformers in England have made a vigorous protest against being compelled by Act of Parliament to vaccinate their children, while their own judgments and conscience revolt against the proceeding. He says the following paragraph, which I have given, is one more of tens of thousands of similar reasons why this abominable practice should not be forced upon the people, either by British or by American statutes. So this is an article about vaccinations. This is this is from the magazine called The Health Reformer. And because it's from this magazine, people really got excited. If I quoted from the Review and Herald, just because it's in that magazine, it seems to give it some weight or credence. So people think if this article is in the Health Reformer, it must be good. Now, I have not directly been able to find the author of this article. I don't know if it's one of the main editors. It seems to me it's an anonymous statement. In the article, let me say this before I begin, the style of writing that is done here, I think is really, really, really bad. In fact, I think it's really bad, seriously bad. Why? So do I say that? Because it's using manipulative language and manipulative modeling. And we should be incredibly careful that we never write like this. And also, when we read an article like this, we should be attuned to what this person is doing. This is not professionally written. This person has a fundamental disagreement with vaccinations. They just say it's wrong to put something in the bloodstream of a human being. They say by inoculating the system with venoms and viruses, they basically say it's wrong. Now, if that's the argument they wanted to make, that's what they should have said, and it should be the end of it. Now, what they begin to do is manipulate you, because now they're going to say that the materials that they use to vaccinate you with are filthy or dirty. They're contaminating. So they're going to say you're going to get really ill because they don't use pure materials. They either use diseased animals or diseased human. And then they're going to go back to their original point to say, even if they were not diseased, it would still be wrong. So they bounce back and forth. And I think this is basically using scare techniques or emotionalism to persuade you, not science. If they think it is wrong to inject something in their body, that they should be what that should be what their argument is. But they add to it. It is inflammatory language, and it is not good to write something like this in a magazine that is called The Health Reformer. So I have no idea what their scientific basics is, but they say, in my words, it's obvious that it's wrong to inject a virus into your body. By the way, they all use dirty viruses coming from diseased creatures, and people are getting ill and being vaccinated. That is their argument. But they offer no reason to say what's wrong with it, except conjecture. Their argument is there's only one way to put things into your body, through your mouth. And of course, we know that's fallacious, silly argument. Because we all know that you can transfer things from the outside to the inside through your skin, through dermal transportation. These are similar arguments that other fundamentalists use, like blood transfusions are wrong. So the argument that they're going to use is in principle, that injecting things into your body is wrong. If you want to put your stomach into, if you want to put stomach into your body, sorry about that. It must go through your mouth. And I want to remind us that the same group of people that have these ideas are the same group of people that are happy to administer enemas. And I hope we all know what an enema is. An enema is when you inject liquid through your rectum into your colon. So they don't mind cleansing you backwards, which is completely unnatural. So the point I want to make is these people just use arguments that don't have any scientific or sound basis. It's just opinions. Now I think they do have a point. And the point is this, that they are using contaminated material. And I'm sure that the contaminated material makes people ill and could potentially be life-threatening. And I believe what they're defying, all the negative side effects, is due to contamination. This is a testimony from someone called Mr. Kelton. He says this, and where you have heard this before, and where have you heard this before? The remedy is worse than the disease. Does that sound familiar to you? If you have been listening to the news, you would have heard this over and over again. What is the remedy today? It's not the vaccination. The remedy today is lockdown, isolation, and obviously the disease is COVID-19. And so they say the cure that we're giving, which is isolation, is worse than if we just all got the disease and got herd immunity. And then this person goes on to give a testimony about his son, his baby boy, vaccinated at 10 months. In 2 weeks, his arm was swollen. Then he got some skin disease and he would scratch himself and made it worse. By the next year, he had died. And all of this was because of the vaccination. This would be enough to scare anybody. Now it's with these persuasive arguments that they would show you and tell you that it's wrong to vaccinate. Now, I don't know the percentages. I don't know any of the details, but I would contend that the vast majority of the problem that they're having is due to contamination. They would take the lymph of a cow, baby cows, or they would take some kind of pus from a skin person and use that. And that was the base for the vaccination program. It took a long time for things to get cleared up. This is 1869, and they make references to a British law. So there's legislation that's going on in the United Kingdom, basically to force everybody to be vaccinated against smallpox. And these people, these Adventists, are arguing and fighting against it. Now, if you go back through what I call Advent history, this vaccination issue goes over many decades. And I think it begins around 1840. All they want to do, the British government, is design programs to make sure or to try to eradicate smallpox from the nation. And so the whole Millerite history, she has got this, let me see. And so the whole of the Millerite history has got this other layer that we haven't really spoken about in the past, which has all the arguments about the rights and wrongs of vaccination. Can you force people to be vaccinated against their will? Hermeneutic was understood then. So my friend, a sister in this movement, was sent this article as evidence that vaccination is wrong. The argument goes like this. Where's Ellen White? She's there. And this is one of the premier health magazines in the church. And if they publish something that is there and Ellen White does not say anything, therefore she must agree with it. So these are the arguments that people use. And they use all based upon spurious comments like this and spurious logic. Now we all know that Ellen White was against the 25-20. She must have been. She must have hated it. Now, how do I know she hated the 25-20? Because in 1863, what did she say? She said nothing. And so you cannot use her silence to develop an argument. It's such a bad logic. And worse than that, we know that Ellen White is a victim of her own history. So I want to remind all of you that Ellen White was vaccinated against smallpox and survived. And this can be found in Second Selected Messages, page 303, beginning paragraph 6. So there was a local epidemic of smallpox in the area, and she was vaccinated. And she's told all of her workers to get vaccinated as well. So I want to mention 3 things: blood transfusions, vaccinations, and radiation therapy. Now, perhaps today, most of us don't have the problem with blood transfusions, but we certainly have a problem with vaccinations and radiation therapy. And Ellen White was favorable, accepted all 3 models, I'll say. Radiation therapy, vaccination, and blood transfusion. So it's not my purpose to have a long conversation or exhortation about the vaccine program that's been rolled out across the world. But I do want to remind us all, because people have wondered how come we didn't figure out this pandemic, especially when we knew about the Spanish flu. And Elder Tess is already on public record with the following comment, a following response to that question. It would have served no purpose to know that the pandemic was coming. What would we have done with that information? Nothing except damage. You may have gloated, you may have pride that we knew it was coming before it came. But what would we have told everybody? Don't submit to the control of the government. Don't get vaccinated. It's there to kill and destroy you. That's where almost every single one of us comes from. That's our perspective. Okay. All right. We're the kind of people that believe that the government puts things in our water to control us. And of course, the massive vaccination programs are to kill people off. That is what we have been taught. Instead of that, what message did God give us about the pandemic?
That's what we
He
would have
said,
thought.
would have thought?
That is what we would have taught.
Oh, would have. Okay, thank you. Okay. Instead of that, the message, instead of that, what message did God give us about the pandemic? He said quietly, the pandemic is coming. So quiet we never heard him. And then he shouted out, when it comes, make sure you get vaccinated. The most important thing we needed to know about this pandemic is the following. What if you want to escape pain? Do one thing, listen to the government. We could never have done that before. Then 2 things we're supposed to do. Listen to the health experts. 1, follow the rules, isolate. 2, when the time comes, and it will, when the time comes for the vaccines to arrive, take them. We should have known. If you want to do any kind of prediction that the vaccines were coming, we could have predicted that. We should have known the vaccines were going to come, and we should have known that they would have worked, that this message that God gave us about the pandemic. And I don't think, by and large, we have missed that point. Back in the summer, we should have been telling everybody.
By and large.
Huh?
And I think by and large. I think you said I don't.
And I think by and large, we have missed that.
Missed the point, yeah.
Got it. Back in the summer, we should have been telling everyone, don't worry, the vaccine's coming. And when it gets here, get vaccinated and you'll be safe. There may be 1 or 2 of you, but I'm just going to say, I bet none of you did that. And when the vaccine came, it comes as an overwhelming surprise to people. It should have been done. We had insider information that these tech companies were going to solve the problem. I don't know how much notice you've taken, but this is one of the most wonderful technological advances that has ever happened in human history, to create a vaccine in less than 12 months. And you may not be aware, but they're using brand new technology that they've never used before in some of these vaccines. All of that we should have known about. But I don't think we have paid proper attention, and we have not discussed it properly. And I fear that even today, we have people in our movement that are scared to get vaccinated. There is nothing new under the sun. There are people who believe the cure is worse than the disease, and therefore they're fearful of what the vaccine will do to them. I only know one person thus far in the movement who has been vaccinated. They're a health worker. I'm not saying they're the only person. I'm sure there are others. But it will come to each and every one of us sooner or later. And it behooves you. It is our duty to look into these things. And I don't want to force people to say, oh, you're rejecting the third angel's message because you're not getting vaccinated, which is true. But what's more important, we are living in a time period where prophecy is being fulfilled. And while you and I have been wandering in the wilderness for 12 months, depressed, thank God that there have been diligent, dedicated men and women in the world who have been willing to spend and be spent in giving of themselves. Don't look to the corruption, the money making. That's always going to be there. Look to what God is doing. In the midst of nothing, He has created something. And above all people, we should have seen this because we were warned. I'm out of time. I want you to end my presentations on this exhortation because I think it's important for us to understand, not just to get vaccinated, but what God is doing, how He has warned and guided us. Today at this camp meeting, He has spoken to you through Elder Tess's messages so that you can be prepared for what is about to come. But I suspect, like me, much of it has gone over your head and you don't realize the significance of what she's teaching. I didn't say this to tell you off. I say this to encourage you. All these messages are from God, designed to help us and assist us and to make us safely through all these events. That's the end. Those are just the opening and closing prayers.
Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and the vaccine, we should have known through the two streams of information and understanding that.
Well, they said, I think it was today, they said that now 55, because I tried to call, I called because I'm a healthcare worker, but being that I'm at home doing it, I couldn't get it because I'm not 65, but they're going to start it at 55 now in Arizona.
In Arizona, really?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we're not there yet here.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna call them up.
Anybody questions or comments?
I think they're even talking about trying to take it mobile, like a mobile vaccination,
Mm-hmm.
and because it's gonna take a long time to vaccinate everybody in this country. A
Right.
long time.
Here in Arizona, there's one part where they're using a whole stadium. And then just all over, they're starting to do a lot of more vaccinations. This was still at 65 though. So yeah, Arizona's really on top of it. Have been on top of things.
It's a long time to get to 65-year-olds in Arizona.
Can I say something?
Mhm.
Oh, David and I had our first vaccine shot today,
Hey,
so we're
Does your arm hurt
on the
yet?
way. Yeah,
Does your
you know,
arm-
it didn't hurt. Yeah, it if you touch it, and then I touched it, I'm like, oh, it hurts, and then I moved it around and it hurt. It's my left arm. I
Yeah.
should have it done in
It'll
your
hurt a
dominant
little more
arm.
tomorrow too. Because I know some
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will. I don't know.
Yeah.
I got the Moderna.
Mhm.
We got that's what they had. I would have preferred the Pfizer, which they're getting in next. The gal said when they're getting a shipment of that. But anyway, we got ours today, and yeah, I'm not 65, but they're doing I pointed out to them, I'm like, here's what it says Arkansas does. if you're in 1C, if you're doing 65 to 6, and up, it also says 16 to 64 with underlying or, complicating health issues.
Mhm.
And sadly, I qualify for obesity now. And so there's a blessing in being obese. I guess I have to look at it that way. I just went over I'm just over the 30 BMI.
Yeah,
And I'm very, it's not, it's very depressing to be there, but I don't care about talking about it. My husband's like making noises behind me. Doesn't bother me. It's reality,
okay.
but Lord willing, I will be able to get it off. I'm moving more than I have moved before. So I'm getting the other things checked out. That might be a reason why I can't lose and I keep gaining when I'm not eating any different, and I'm actually overall eating less. But yeah, we'll see. My physical therapy assistant had the Moderna and got sick as a dog on the first shot, which generally they say if you're going to get any kind of illness, you're part of it, you're going to get it the second shot. But she was like, it only lasted a couple days with vomiting and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't tell me that. But anyway, so I never thought, talking about, I missed part of it because I was in brushing my teeth and stuff. When you were reading about the vaccination, so I'll have to read over it. But, I remember Tess saying one time, because people were talking about, well, if I was vaccinated, because we raised Adventist or whatever, should I be vaccinated? And she said in one presentation that she wasn't necessarily, you guys have great minds to know where these presentations were, but she wasn't necessarily talking about a physical vaccination, but being vaccinated prophetically, I think was her words, so that we would, not be, not lose, miss the boat or whatever, the good boat, the good ship, Alexandra. But that's how she explained it, that she didn't even at the time realize that her whole presentation on vaccinations would really have a literal application here at the end of the world. And so anyway, like I said, I missed what was said there at the end. But anyways, I'm just taking up time here and it's late for us, past our bedtime. So, but yeah, I hope everybody who, when with the Johnson & Johnson coming out, Dr. Fauci says, just whichever one comes along, take it. And there'll be more, it'll be happening more. And this was a miracle. I had a different appointment at the clinic today. David's appointment was for Friday to get the shot. And I said something when I pointed out about how I qualified, according to what Arkansas said. She's like, oh, well, you can have your shot. And she says to him, and you can have your shot today also. So after I had my appointment, we got our shots. It was like, without an appointment, it was just like a God thing. Everything just flowed so smoothly that we just felt like this is the right thing. We're doing the right thing. So pray that we don't have any funny reactions like my daughter-in-law said.
He'll probably be okay. Larry and his mom got their second one today.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, so I mean, for being under 65, I'm, very blessed that I got it. Like I said, I'm like, hey, I heard a talk or I read an article or something about obesity and people feeling embarrassed or something because they didn't necessarily feel that was I can't think of the term. If I've looked up the document, I'll tell you, it's not a pre-existing condition, but a complicating condition. And they didn't feel it was that, or they felt embarrassed they were obese or whatever. And this whole article said if the government says this falls under that category, don't be embarrassed, don't be shy, don't be whatever. You have that right because that's the way they've laid it out. So I thought, okay, this is the way that it's laid out. And granted, I don't want to be, this heavy. I didn't ask for it. I didn't do anything different. I don't know why it happened. And, but it is, and I'm taking advantage of the opportunity. I
Yeah.
mean, why wait until they open it up to all ages when I can do it now?
Yeah.
And so if there's anybody whose BMI is 30 or above, well, and you live in the state of Arkansas, you can get it.
I started doing a few things because I'm just sitting all the time with Mark and I'm really kind of got tired of sitting, so I gained some weight. And so what I do is I go back, now I'm back in the courtyard, my backyard, and then I started doing my walk, my hour. I did an hour and a half the next day. Jude and I walked 2 miles today. Even though I'm having back pain, I felt a little better today. I can't feel the left knee down, but I still walk because I found out that by me sitting so much, the neuropathy is so bad. So if I keep myself busy, then the worst thing I have is just the back pains. So it evens me out. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I've been walking. It's counting. I'm doing step counting, which I have to always remember my phone in my pocket. But I mean, I'm walking more than I've walked in a long time, and I do it every day. And if I can't walk, I have a recumbent bike that I ride. And I can't. My whole thing. It's like we have different places we walk, so it's like 2 times around this one pond. It's generally a half an hour, and because that's where I work myself up to half an hour, which for me it was a lot. And but then I've done much more because that only gives me like 2,700 steps. And whether we were doing something the other day and I had over 4,000 steps, and that's the most I've had. I've done that a couple times last week, and that's the most, obviously short-term goal is 5,000, long-term is 10,000 steps, because that's what they recommend is 10,000 steps, everybody a day.
Oh, wow.
A day,
Wow.
which is what you probably did it if you did a couple miles.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, David just said it's 3.9 miles.
Okay.
You have to walk 3.9 miles to get 10,000 or 100,000 steps, but
Okay.
that is one of the things that they said, if you are sedentary, get up and I said, if I got up even, and walked if in the house for 10 minutes, just 3 times during the day, that's a 30-minute walk, and 10 minutes doesn't seem like a big deal to be getting and walking, except my house.
Yeah.
It's not very big. But anyway, that's why my bike is in the house now, and we ride that if the weather's not conducive. But yeah, I've been pretty consistent about being able to get outside and walk or do the bike. Because yeah, I'm totally committed. When I saw that BMI, I'm like, oh no, this isn't, this is not a reality for a girl. No, I'm not a girl anymore. But still, for no reason. I mean, I was 140, so anyway,
I was,
okay.
we were at the morning devotional, and they were talking about the spice cumin.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, that's what I did. Mhm.
Yeah, and they use that as an agent to rev up your metabolism
Mhm.
and burn calories.